It was down in Louisiana, just about a mile from Texarkana. They were singing Gold Tom Cotton. Good morning, Senator.
Morning.
Hey,
I would sing. You don't want to hear me singing.
No, you don't want to hear us singing.
CCR is a good way to come into the hour.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah,
it's been a while since
here.
we've had you.
Now, before we go any further, are you going to do football picks with us this year?
I'll do my best.
Cotton picking picks with Tom Cotton.
last year. Cotton picking picks with Tom Cotton.
The cotton picking picks is just a natural.
Yeah, cotton picking
But
picks.
you're pretty pricey to get in here. We understood that. We deal with Mark May, Herm Edwards.
Surely we have some head funds out there.
When it came to Tom Cotton, it was like we couldn't afford him. Couldn't afford Tom.
If only.
8:08, 8 minutes after 8 o'clock. I'm going to ask you some silly stuff, soft stuff to get us started.
All right.
This is what we're asking all the listeners today. Sloppy Joe or Chili Dog?
Both pretty good. I think I'll take a Sloppy Joe, though.
All right.
Oh, there you go, David.
I'm with you.
Do you play fantasy football?
I do not.
I don't either.
I'd be interested in it, but I fear that I would get obsessive and it would take up too much time from work and family.
Watermelons, Hope or Cave City?
I probably guess I have to go with Hope, even though Cave City's great, but, Hope's got the Watermelon Festival.
Yeah.
There you go.
They do. Those are just some of the easy things. I do want to ask you about some serious things. I think at the top of my list when I see you, I think of you and I think of ISIS. And in your mind, how big a threat is this to the mainland United States? Because they're getting in Europe every day, it seems like, or in Afghanistan. They're getting, 90 people killed, 80 people killed. Hello?
Every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
How big a threat do you think is it on the American homeland?
It's a real threat. The FBI director has stated that they have open ISIS investigations in all 50 states, to include ours. I'm on the Intelligence Committee, so I see a lot of this threat reporting. Sometimes politicians in Washington distinguish between what they call directed or ordered attacks and inspired attacks. To me, that's not really a reasonable distinction because the victims are just as dead, whether someone was inspired by ISIS or directed by ISIS. And just a reminder that we can't really win the war on terrorism by staying on defense. You see the kind of inspired attacks that we saw in Orlando or San Bernardino, attacks with something like a truck in Nice, France, or the one-off attacks that Germany's been facing over the last month. We can't play, or we can't have a perfect batting average on defense in the war on terrorism. We have to go on offense in places like Iraq and Syria and Libya. And so forth.
Libya yesterday, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, the 5 years on from what I think was a very ill-advised intervention in Libya in 2011, it's now the home of the most capable and largest ISIS cell outside of Syria itself. That's why we had those airstrikes there yesterday.
How are we going to get past all this, or are we ever, because we've been dealing with it since Jesus Christ walked the earth, that problem in the Mideast? Is it going to be through peace? Is it going to be through force? Is it going to be a combination package? Are we going to have to rely on the other nations to pull their weight? Which I think they ought to do. I see us bombing the hell out of people, and I wonder what they...
Yeah, we have to do both. Obviously there has to be some military and intelligence aspect to this. Just 2.5 years ago, before ISIS kind of rampaged across eastern Syria and northern and western Iraq and took Mosul, took Fallujah, took Ramadi and Tikrit, there weren't a lot of inspired attacks in Europe and the United States. And if ISIS were once again seen as the losing horse, as Osama bin Laden spoke of strong horses and weak horses, they probably wouldn't be quite so inspiring to millions of people around the world. So we have to be, I think, more aggressive. We have to accelerate the pace of our military operations. We have to be tougher in our intelligence operations than President Obama has been willing to do. There also has to be an effort, though, to try to persuade those, the very small percentage of Muslims around the world who are prone to radicalization not to be radicalized. To actually follow a life of peace. In my experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, the vast majority of Muslims there just want what most Arkansans want. They want to live in safety and security. They want to have a decent job. They want to provide for their family and give their kids better opportunities than they had. But, a small percentage of a very large number is still a reasonably large number of people who want to try to make attacks. In the end, though, we can't, we sitting here in Little Rock in Washington, D.C., Christians, Americans, we're not going to speak to Muslims in places like Bangladesh or Syria or Egypt or Libya. That's an effort. That's a conversation that has to happen in the Muslim world, and we need Muslim leaders around the world and in America to lead that conversation. And there are leaders like that. The King of Jordan or the President of Egypt have made an effort to try to focus on reform Islam, trying to address some of the underlying problems in the Islamic world that helps create these terrorists. That's something that they have to do, though. We have to support them and stand with them to do it, but ultimately that's a conversation that they have to have.
To me, ultimately, I think what you're getting is a bunch of disenfranchised youth who have no job, they have nothing, and they're promised this, they're promised that. And oh, by the way, if you die doing this, the rewards that await you. It's kind of like, I think, what is wrong with this country today, in that police don't like going into certain neighborhoods because it's a lose-lose deal. I mean, it's almost like that. They go into these neighborhoods where they're not liked, where they're not respected, and they have to enforce law. And the people that live in the neighborhoods, a lot of the people in the neighborhoods want peace and quiet.
Yeah, especially for what you would call the foot soldiers, the cannon fodder for ISIS, the kind of people who are going to the caliphate in Iraq and Syria, or the kind of people who are willing to conduct suicide attacks in the West. Now, a lot of ISIS leaders, like a lot of al-Qaeda leaders, are actually well-educated. They come from wealthy and prominent families. So they truly believe the radical ideology of radical Islam. But in places like Belgium, for instance, which, strangely enough, has the highest per capita of ISIS recruits of any country in the world.
That's just about overcome,
right? The Molenbeek district outside of Brussels, which is the home of the European Union, is essentially a no-go zone for police, and a lot of the plotting that has occurred in the attacks first in Paris and then in Brussels originated in the Molenbeek district.
Oh, we look at these guys and we say, how can you relate and talk to a guy who gets in an airplane knowing he's going to die and doesn't care? Do they not look at videos of a guy jumping 25,000 feet out of an airplane and go, those Americans are crazy? Yeah. Did you see that?
I did.
There ain't no way!
When I jumped out of a plane, it was only about 800 feet. My parachute triggered immediately. So.
Now, a lot of people don't know, are uninformed. It was talked about a lot during the election. You did serve.
I was in the Army for about 5 years.
Yeah.
I was an infantry officer.
That's what I was. What was your MOS?
Infantry officer.
I was 31 Bravo.
Just think of your career, your life arc, rather. It's well documented. You grew up in a small town. You grew up on a farm.
Yeah.
Went to Dardanelle High School. Said you love playing basketball. You go from there, from the little city of Dardanelle to Harvard. From there you wind up in the military serving overseas, and all of a sudden you're a U.S. Senator on the Armed Services Committee. It's been a remarkable journey, I would say, for you. I was wondering, I think who you are probably has never changed, but what's changed about you during the course of all those different unique experiences?
Yeah, after I went to Harvard, I had to join the Army to redeem myself.
Were you like straight A? Were you a straight A student at Dardanelle? Yes.
I did okay at Dardanelle. It was a little bit tougher at Harvard.
Well, I was talking to him about the Harvard produced Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's just signed with a $12 million deal with the Jets, the Linsanity.
Linsanity.
Yeah, and so Harvard now has sort of become, it's obviously the smart place to go, but it can produce some good athletes. And you said you thought about trying to play basketball even at Harvard.
I was a high school hero and a college zero. When you're a Dardanelle Sand Lizard, if you're 6'5", you can play underneath the basket, which I did for 3 years. But then even in the Ivy League version,
that's how tall you are?
Yeah, 6'5".
Wow.
Well,
he's taller than I am right now. I'm standing up and he's sitting down.
Senator Cotton is obviously he's a Razorback fan, Razorback supporter. So much so he hired Keith Stokes to be his agricultural liaison.
There he is.
So now he's got Tusk in his back pocket if he ever needs him. So
that's a pretty strong card to play in Arkansas.
It is. And we had talked about trying to get you on the show because you showed interest in maybe being locked in and doing picks every week. So your interest in sports is still high, even though you're having to work against ISIS and all these other things happening in our world.
Yeah, well, and also, too, as I announced on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and I announced to a larger audience at the Republican National Convention, we're expecting our second child at Christmas.
Yeah,
so that keeps me very busy as well.
That'll keep you busy, that's for sure. Tell me about being at the convention.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Cleveland's a great city. The security there was excellent, but not obtrusive. The law enforcement officers were highly professional. It's a great opportunity to meet with Republicans from all around the country, share our views of the world, and want to move our country forward. So I was glad to be there, glad to speak about my family's history of service. My dad was in Vietnam. My grandfather was in World War II, not because there's anything extraordinary about our family, but I think we're pretty ordinary and representative, certainly of Arkansas families. Normally military service is a family business in this country, especially in this state. And I don't think politicians in Washington have served our troops well enough in recent years so they can serve us.
The one thing about you and your military, I don't know if anybody knows that, you chose to go into the military from Harvard. You got out and said, look, I'm going to join, and why? What prompted that?
Well, it was the 9/11 attacks. I was finishing up my last year in law school when those attacks happened. I wanted to rush out and join right away. A few friends of mine, to include Matt Zimmerman, an assistant coach up at University of Arkansas.
The new voice of the Razorbacks now long ago.
He reassured me that the Army wasn't going anywhere and the bad guys weren't going anywhere, and I definitely didn't want to make a lieutenant or a private salary with law school loans. And once I started taking home about $400 a month, I knew that he was right. So after about 3 years of working and repaying my loans, then I joined. Our country was under attack, and we were in a time of war, and I wanted to go serve.
I'm surprised at the number of people I hear say that now.
Yeah, it's amazing. Not surprising. It was obviously a very impactful moment for our country and our young people. I was going to ask, too, obviously, since we're talking military, the biggest story nationally right now is Trump's comments about the Gold Star family. Your comments on that?
Well, there's no group of Americans who have sacrificed more for our country and its freedom than Gold Star families. There's about 7,000 of them from the Iraq and the Afghanistan war, and I know a lot of them, and I presented flags to some of them at the funerals for their sons and daughters at Arlington National Cemetery when I served there, and we should treat them with the utmost tenderness and respect and love. They're all entitled to speak out more than any other American on matters of public concern. That doesn't mean that they all agree by any means, and we should focus on what we think is going to keep this country safe, to deter our adversaries from starting wars or attacking us to begin with, so there aren't any more Gold Star families in the future. And Donald Trump would be well advised to focus on those matters, on the policies that are going to keep this country safe, as opposed to back and forth with the Klan family.
Let me ask you about that. I'm still undecided. I know I'm going to vote for Trump probably just because I cannot vote for Hillary. I just can't do it. And it's just, if somebody would find him a muffler or a muzzle or something to put on, or if he would begin every sentence with all due respect, something like that.
Yeah, Ricky Bobby did it.
Borrowed from Ricky Bobby.
Exactly.
With all due respect,
he's his own worst enemy. Yeah.
I do have to say real quick, too, I always like finding out interesting things about people that are high-profile folks, like a U.S. Senator, and I found out from my good friend Alice Stewart that not only have you excelled in the classroom and in the battlefield and that, as a politician, that you are one of the best runners in Congress, that you normally go out and win the, 5K and 10K. I mean, you're beating everybody around the country in that. Is that right? You've won twice?
Being the fastest man in Congress is pretty low bar. But yeah, so there's a nice charity run every spring in not just Congress, but in most of the other branches and agencies of government, the media and so forth, that help support guide dogs for soldiers who have been wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I'm the 4-time defending champion.
How about that?
Fastest man in Congress.
Wow. And two, you're 39, Tommy. He'll turn 40 next May, I guess. Correct? I have to ask.
I'm living the glory days.
Listen, you're still a young
hurry.
I would always love this. So you're 39 when Tom Cotton was a young lad, 6 or 7. Was there a particular Razorback maybe that you looked up to that you go, that was one of my favorite players? Now, I don't know if he was born in
53.
No, I'm kidding. No, anybody.
David Basil.
Who do you remember as a young kid? What's your earliest memories of the Razorbacks?
Quinn Grovey is one of my earliest basketball players, and then or football players. The basketball players in the second round of triplets in the late 1980s. Was probably my first real memories of basketball.
You talking about Maydale?
Yeah. Quinn Grovey. We sometimes nobody mentions Quinn Grovey's name hardly anymore. You mentioned Clint Sterner, Matt Jones, but Quinn Grovey, if you remember, we had not been to the Cotton Bowl in forever. And he got us back there in back-to-back years, and he was a very tough player to stop.
Had a tough senior year.
He did. That was with Jack Crow, correct?
Yeah.
We were giving up 50, 60 points a game, so there's not much he could do. But so he went to 2 Cotton Bowls in the third year was when this last year was when it fell off the table, right?
Right.
Yeah. Did you go to games as a young lad or no? Just watch them TV?
A little bit. Not, more likely in Little Rock. My mom's family is just from east of Little Rock, so we can come down and see them as well. My sister went to University of Arkansas, so once she got there in '93, we started going
Good years
more often.
Good years, those basketball years. Have you had a chance to be around Coach Bielema? Being a U.S. Senator, it keeps you busy, but one of the perks is you sometimes get a chance to be around guys like Bielema or Mike Anderson.
Not yet, but I hope so. I met Coach Anderson a couple times. When he was when Coach Anderson
to Spain.
Yeah. And Coach Anderson was at UAB, and Matt Zimmerman was his assistant coach. I was actually at Fort Benning, which is only about a couple-hour drive over to Birmingham. So I'd go over and see them when I had weekend passes and so forth.
Would you ever tweet out, "Coach, run the ball more," or "throw the ball"? Would you ever be willing to comment like that?
They get plenty of free advice from all the other fans.
Do you follow NFL at all, or is it mostly just college sports? Do you like?
No, I follow NFL quite a bit. Yeah.
Favorite team?
Yeah, I really like the Patriots.
All right. Good choice.
I was in school in Harvard when the Parcells-Bledsoe team went to the Super Bowl. They lost the Packers.
Wow.
But I was also there for the first Super Bowl of the Belichick-Brady era. So this is another reason, Tom, if you want a reason that you need to elect Republicans this year, if Hillary Clinton is in office, we're going to see more left-wing judges that are going to continue to uphold Tom Brady's suspension.
Nice.
I have never seen a more inflated, pardon the pun, story in my life than that story. It took 2 years to figure out. Okay,
how many millions were spent in legal fees? Obviously, you're an attorney. How many years in legal? How much money? I think it was like $20 or $30 million. Maybe it was more than that, or maybe it was $50 million between the two. What a waste of money! What a waste of money!
There was a lot.
They got it.
So you do try to keep up during football season with what's going on, even though you have.
I do. Sundays I generally don't do much work in politics. Sunday is a chance to go to church, enjoy some time with family, and then watch Red Zone for 6.5 hours.
That's it. Gotta get the Red Zone.
Nice.
And you do your own twittering, do you? And you have not blocked me. I just want everybody to know you have not blocked me.
No, but that's an important reminder that I'm telling my staff to put on my to-do list for the day.
I will say this about your staff. Keith one day introduced me to a lot of your staff, and I don't know if people realize that the youth that really are involved with a lot of congressmen, in this country. Most of them are young, under the age of 30 and 35.
Yeah, Keith is like the father of the office.
Well, it is fun, I think, too. You haven't lost your roots, and you keep a guy like this, so you've known the family back and forth.
Keith, I know the feeling. They keep an old guy around just for. I don't know why.
Good old cowboy.
Do you have a favorite radio? I know that I catch you on Twitter every once in a while. You're appearing on different radio shows and TV shows. Do you have a favorite that you like going on, whether it be nationally or regionally, or one maybe that you don't have the best time going on? I know you won't probably say that, but do you have the Buzz? Well, you can say the Buzz. What would be second place of anybody that you do? Do you do a lot of radio interviews? Do you have time for that and TV?
Yeah, I do. I try to do KRN once a week. We try to do once a month, once every couple months.
Are they still on the air?
Regional,
I didn't know that.
Regional radio. I do. I do national radio programs. I do the Hugh Hewitt program quite a bit. It reaches a broad audience across the country. On TV, I frequently go on CNN, MSNBC. They're sometimes viewed as more centrist or even left of center, but I think it's important. I think it's important that we reach audiences that are not just preaching to the choir.
Agreed.
The Republican Party and conservatives are not a majority in this country, so we have to persuade those people who may be independents or moderates who are dissatisfied with the direction of the country over the last 8 years.
I bet they love having you on CNN just to have. Obviously you're a high-profile Republican that they would probably like having you on there, just as like you said, to sort of balance things out a little bit.
I saw Wallace get a hold of Hillary the other day, and it wasn't pretty. Did you see it?
Well, yeah. She said that FBI Director Comey had said that everything was truthful. Like she lied about the 5 lies that she told her about her email. And I can tell you that, this is serious business. There are 2 kinds of high-ranking officials in our government. Those that know they have been hacked by a foreign intelligence service and those that don't know they've been hacked by a foreign intelligence service. Yeah. And it's one thing, if you're a congressman or a senator and you're not subject, you don't have highly sensitive information, you're one of 535, but for the Secretary of State, who is the leading diplomat in the world, who handles some of our most classified information, to put that information on a private server in her bathroom is extreme carelessness, as the FBI director said. And she told multiple lies to the American people about it, and she's still lying about it.
She lied about lying. And they were showing Chris Wallace. It's Chris Wallace.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Yeah. And he kind of had a... Well, that's not what you said.
That's not what she
said. Well, Senator Connor, I was going to ask, too, I know you got to get out here shortly. We were talking the other day about O'Reilly has this thing on legends and whatever.
Legends and lies, yeah.
Talking about the history of our country, and they were talking about the George Washington, the first constitutional convention, and they talked about how the states were really arguing and they were against each other, but they got behind closed doors and said, listen, for the good of this country, we've got to compromise. And I remember talking with Senator David Pryor a couple years ago, and he said that's what looks different now than when he was in politics. He said there is zero compromise. How do you address that, and will it change, or do you just think that's the nature that nobody can get together anymore and compromise a little bit?
You can. I think part of the problem over the last 8 years, though, has been Barack Obama's unwillingness to compromise with Republicans. He came into office claiming that he was going to be post-partisan or transcend partisanship, so the expectations were very high. And he's been deeply partisan for a long time. If you talk to John Boehner, for instance, now that he's no longer in office, he'll tell you that on multiple occasions that he thought they were very close to some kind of big deal on the budget, and that President Obama always ended up walking away from it. Now, me personally, what I found in the Congress is you just have to identify areas of overlapping interest. So, for instance, there are some senators from states that are fairly liberal or produce liberal politicians like Oregon or Washington State or Maine. We have a lot in common, though, when it comes to the people we serve because of our forester industry. Just take one example. So we work together on legislation despite our philosophical differences that benefit the people that we serve. Right. So it's more of an issue-by-issue basis in which you find coalitions of Democrats and sometimes Republicans who you strongly agree with, but sometimes strongly oppose on certain issues.
Well, I'll tell you guys, listen, if Senator Cotton is appearing weekly on that other radio station that probably has a signal that gets barely outside of Little Rock, we think that we need Cotton Picking Picks.
Cotton Picking Picks with Tom Cotton.
Should be a weekly deal for football games, I think. Squeeze us in there, Senator.
You can tweet us your answer. You can do that.
We'll see. We'll talk to Dylan about that. Y'all do that on Fridays or Thursdays?
Well, it's up to you. Let's whatever works best in your schedule.
Yeah, we'll rearrange it Thursday or Friday.
Although now, what is there? College football games every night but Wednesday night?
It's about that.
Look, we'll for your trouble, we'll get a hold of Pettigene Meats and send you a deluxe gift box.
Is every Razorback game this year on a Saturday?
Yes.
Yeah. Except the last one.
The last one?
The day after Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, go out on a limb. What are they going to be this year?
Undefeated.
Oh, wow.
If you're gonna pander, you got to go all the way in.
Undefeated, Hope, Melons, the whole thing.
No, well, I mean, so the non-conference schedule looks pretty good, and they've got all the tough games at home. So I'm hopeful they can be, 8-5, or
that'd be nice,
9-4 again with plus a bowl game.
That'd be great.
Yeah, I think if you hit 8 or 9, you got a lot of happy Razorback fans. If you hit 7, but below that would probably be disappointing. But he sounds like he's doing the right things up there.
It's been an honor to have you on.
It sure has been an honor. Yeah.
Sure, if we get you for those pigskin picks. Cotton Picking Picks. It's just rolling.
Cotton Picking Picks with Tom. When does your second baby do?
Christmas.
All right. Should be an interesting fall.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Well, thanks for being here. Congratulations on your upcoming child.
Thanks, guys.
And always good to see you, Keith.
Keith, we'll see you at the Governor's Mansion. Pigskin Preview.
I hope this works out.